This is week 4 of the I Am Aligned experience. This is the Identity Unplugged live video with a special guest who I'm going to introduce in a second. The theme this week has been all about presence. And tonight we're just going to have a really honest conversation with one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. And I have to tell you all, before I introduce her, there was a moment. She and I jumped on this video about 15 minutes ago. And there was a moment when I almost didn't publish for you guys because I wanted to keep her all to myself. And then I thought that would be mean. That wouldn't be very Jesus-like. So I will share her with you. So today at Identity Unplugged, I have my good friend, Patsy Clairmont. Patsy has written, how many books have you written now, Patsy?
Oh, I don't know, 30.
A lot of books.
I said, I don't know, and then I go 30.
30, just right off the top of your head. I know. How do you do that? Like someone like me who has agonized through 2 books, it's not super hard for me to come up with my number. She's written just tons of books. She was on tour with Women of Faith for years and years. She's doing a sisters event right now with Anita Renfro and Jan Silvius. Mm-hmm. And do you have some more events coming up this fall, don't you?
You know, actually, we just finished our last one, and it was in Houston, Texas, with a group of fabulous women who have gone through horrendous times with great anticipation of God meeting them, and He has.
He has. That's beautiful. Well, it's been an amazing thing to watch you and Anita and Jan do this event together. So welcome, Patsy, for coming and hanging out with us here at the I Am Online experience. I'm so glad to see you.
Well, thank you, Michelle. I couldn't be happier than to share some airtime with you. I can't tell you how I miss you. There is just something about our kinship that goes very deep and is very sweet. And we have that joy of knowing each other's heart for the Lord and each other. Yes. That's very special.
To give everybody who's watching an inside peek, you and I, we met when I helped out with Women of Faith, and then I went on tour with Women of Faith, and we became just, like sisters. It was an interesting thing going to a different city every weekend and being on tour with everyone. And quite honestly, there's so many people, as you know, involved with the whole Women of Faith program. But the one person that was a safe place for me every single weekend was you. And I just remember that when I would show up in a new city with new people, and I was kind of the new kid on the block, I would just look for your face and I'd be like, okay, there's my buddy. I'm okay. I've got my friend here. And you and I, we would share so many conversations about our faith, about our struggles, about what God was teaching us, what we were wrestling with. And we've done that ongoing. For everybody who's listening, when I was going through cancer and I couldn't speak and couldn't talk, you and I just continued that conversation over text.
That's right. That's right.
And it was just as sweet and rich. But so what we're going to do, for those of you who are joining us, is we're basically going to do what Patsy and I do anyway, just talking about life and our faith and our struggles with identity. But we're just going to allow, a few hundred of you to join in and listen and watch and ask questions and all of that kind of stuff. So to all of you here, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. And Patsy, so there's probably about 30 comments already on the Facebook page. Everybody is so happy to see your sweet face on this video. They are just, okay, here, Christy says, Patsy is my favorite. I went to every Woman of Faith since the first one.
Sweet.
Isn't that sweet? And everybody's saying hi. Wendy says hi. Diane says hi. Juanita says hi. So many, you have so many friends here that are so glad that you're joining us. So let's dive right into the content for today. So we've been talking about identity. As you know, I wrote this book called I Am, a 60-day journey to knowing who you are because of who He is. However, I always laugh because we all know that 60 days isn't going to be nearly enough. Right? So I'm going to start with an initial question. When you think back on your early years, whether teen years or 20s or early parenting years, did you ever struggle with insecurity, identity, or feeling any kind of sense of self-doubt about who you were? I know.
That makes me giggle. Okay, as a teenager, I was a mess. And as an adult, I was a basket case. And I've progressed slightly from that place. I find that life is an ongoing journey. We keep thinking the destination is next year or next season, but the truth of the matter is there'll always be some level of struggle with inadequacy until we see the sweet feet of Jesus and know we're home.
Absolutely. So true. Okay. So now why don't you give us this is where I'm asking you a hard question. So I'm going to get all up in your business and you can just plead the fifth and refuse to answer if you don't want to. But when you would have either past or present moments of insecurity, when that wave of insecurity sweeps up and you just start going, what in the world is wrong with me? What are the kinds of behaviors or red flags that you see in your choices and reactions and responses that indicate to you, okay, I'm not in a great identity place right now?
Well, I got into such trouble from my teenage years into my young adulthood, and I didn't know to look for the red flags, but the flags were waving over my head in a flurry.
Like a neon sign.
Yes.
Somebody save me from myself.
And I wish someone would have saved me from myself. But what the Lord was about to do was to teach me how to reach in and pull up some courage, because I had given in to so many fears and so much insecurity and so many bad messages floating around in my brain that were dictating the quality of my existence. Mm-hmm. And so by the time I was a young adult and a new mother, certainly I was a bride very young. I was 17 when I married Les. We were 20 when we had our first baby. And I still wasn't ready to be a mother. I wanted to be, but I was not ready to be. God bless firstborns.
I'm sitting here thinking I'm 46. I still don't think I'm ready to be a mother.
Yes.
And it's kind of too late at this point.
Well, I'm 72 and I know I'm not ready. But when I was younger, I was certain I had a lot of answers, even though when I measured what I believed to how I was existing, there was a great gulf in between. Mm-hmm. And it took forever until I was virtually a prisoner in my home from my agoraphobia, which was all about my anxiety attacks that backed me into a corner. And I began making up my own gospel truth. I began saying, God has favorites. I'm not on the list because I've asked him to deliver me, and he has not fixed me in the night while I'm resting so I can rise up righteous in the morning. So the truth of the matter was I was splintered and in so much trouble. But there was a morning I woke up and I realized I wasn't going to make it. I was not only housebound, now I was bedbound. And my prayer had changed to, oh Lord, give me a disease, not one that'll hurt, not one that'll kill me, just that will make it legitimate for me to hide like this. And then I woke up and I realized you're not going to make it if you don't do something. And it was at that point that I felt his presence. And I felt him speak to me. I said to him, Lord, I'll do whatever you ask of me. That's really an important prayer, because that's a prayer that says, I'm done with all my own answers. And now I'm going to be willing to do what you say. And when I said that, he immediately spoke to me, and the words were very simple: make your bed. And I thought to myself, oh no, I don't want to make my
Isn't that just the truth? We beg for help, and then God gives us an instruction. We're like, okay, but not that.
Yes,
That.
exactly. I mean, I just told him I'll do whatever you ask. And all he asked was me to make my bed, but I was in the bed and it just seemed a little hard to make it, which was the point. You have to get up, get out of bed, and take a step in the direction of life and wellness and wholeness and truth. And it was because of the strength of his presence, his gracious spirit, his wooing in my time of great frailty, that I was able to step out of the bed. And I remembered standing there looking at that bed thinking, Lord, do I have to make both sides? Or could I just make my own, and you know who make his own side? He said, make both sides and do it every day.
Darn it. Why did he do that?
Which seems so boring. Now, when I say he said that to me, I did not open up my Bible and read that. I did not hear an audible voice. It was his presence within me, and the script was scrawled across my mind and my heart in a way I could not deny that it was him. Normally, I couldn't trust a voice in my head because of all the bad messages, but I knew I would never say to myself, make my bed.
Isn't that
I wouldn't say that.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I think all of us have a tape of messages in our head, and some of us more than others. I struggle with that. These constant, these scripts that replay over and over again. And especially in the early years, I really struggled to discern between the scripts that I heard that were negative and who God was, because I had some confusion about how God felt about me. So how do you discern between false messages and true ones? Do you have anything that's really helped you to be able to pick through knowing God's voice versus all the other messages you've heard from mean people or or even unintentional criticisms or whatever?
I have found the only thing for me that has worked has been scripture, that it gives me a plumb line. It gives me a filter. If you go into Philippians, the filter there is in the 4th chapter where it talks about thinking on things that are good and true and pure and just and lovely and of good report. Now, if you take all those words one by one and you say to yourself with the thought you're having, is this true? Is it pure? Is it just? Is it lovely? Is it of good report? If it doesn't measure up with that plumb line of truth, then it's not in your best interest to embrace it. So that would be one way. And it says in scripture, the wisdom that comes from above is pure and just. You know, it's got quality to it. It is not going to take away from your existence. It's going to add to the quality of your life. God is not going to speak something into you that's detrimental. He said, my plans for you are good. Yes. And when he used that word in the very beginning is in creation, when he made the beauty of the world, and he said, this is good, this is good. And that word good, we've kind of used up a lot of the goodness in good. Yes. It's become so common that we
like
don't.
Trite. It's become trite and cheap. We don't really appreciate it.
Well, even if my husband will say to me, I'll say, how do I look? He says, you look good. Is that it? You have something better to say to me than good? Well, good is a grand, wondrous, unbelievable, unimaginable thing. Mm-hmm. And it would be it would be good if we could go back and claim the fullness of it for our mind and for our heart, because God's intentions are good.
That blows my mind to continually come back to that truth that God is always good and everything filters through the palm of his hand. Everything that comes to me has to go through him first. And so even when I don't understand, even when I can't comprehend, going back to the fact that God's character can be trusted, that God always operates from a purity of goodness, always.
Yes.
And that, I mean, we have even the best human people don't have that kind of purity of goodness. We just don't, even the very, very best people. And so we try to, I read something the other day, I can't remember what book I read it in, but someone said in this book that God made man in his image, and so man returned the favor. Making God in man's image. And we try to, put onto God what we experience with humans, and it just isn't the same. It's not even close.
No, not even close.
Okay, so let's talk present. You gave us some history on your journey and how you processed through some devastating struggles on your sense of self and your sense of value and all of that, and how really it was the graciousness of God that helped pull you out of bed.
And may I say that it took years not to get out of bed. That only took a moment, but to begin to live in the fullness of what he calls us to, learning to assimilate truth. It is one thing to know the truth. It's another thing to allow that truth to set you free.
Oh, isn't that the truth? Yeah.
It is. The walk of liberty is a long walk, honey. And some areas of our life are more difficult than others. We all have innate weaknesses. And it just takes time and effort and belief, because we become downhearted when it is an instant. We're used to turning on our computers and there's a picture there. We're used to sticking something in the microwave and it's cooked and warmed up and ready to go. And we think all of life should be programmed like that, and it just isn't. The things that I have learned from early, that I have seen proven in the years to follow, that have brought me to the place I am today, it's been a long, long journey. And it's been a rich one. It's been a good one. He took me from hiding away in my home, unable to function and having terrible thoughts about myself and limiting thoughts about who he is, to giving me privileges I could have never imagined.
So I think it was Eugene Peterson who said that that our spiritual walk, our Christian walk, is a long obedience in the same direction. And that is exactly what you're talking about, that I think we want to be healed. We want to pray for healing. And like you said, wake up the next morning and God has worked that in us as we slept.
That's right.
And one thing I've learned even this year, and I shared this with those in our I Am Online experience, is that I have done some of the hardest emotional work in my entire life over the last 10 to 12 months. I mean, some of the very hardest emotional work and healing. And God is doing, let's put it this way, God's carrying the heavy load of that healing. I'm just doing some making your bed kind of tasks. But what I'm starting to discover is I'm not going to wake up one day and finally be whole. It's going to be an ongoing struggle of just taking another faithful step and failing, and then falling on my face in humility before God and say, have mercy on me, and then getting up and walking forward another few steps. And that is how it's going to be until we see Jesus face to face.
Well, I think the prayer mercy is probably the one that I pray the most often for myself. Mercy, Lord, have mercy on me. Because here I am at the last pages in my calendar, and I am still having to cry out, oh God, have mercy on me. And have mercy toward the people that have to encounter me on a rough day. I mean, I'm so surprised by how deep my bad behavior goes, and how deep his great embracing love is, that he covers all of what I don't know what to do with. You know, I get so frustrated. I think, now I knew better than to talk that way, or to have that tone, or to cop that attitude, or a thousand.
Oh, come on now. You don't have attitudes, Patsy. I'm sure that you don't have any attitudes.
And if I had any doubt that I have attitude, I just got a dog that's helping prove it.
Okay, Patsy just got a puppy. When was it? Yesterday?
Yeah.
Yesterday, she got a puppy.
This is day 2 with the puppy, and I'm thinking, now where could I ship this puppy to until it is obedient? I just felt like there was a little message in that for me.
I was going to say, it sounds like something my husband would think about me. Where can I ship her until somebody teaches her how to behave?
Well, this is a lively, darling, little obstinate puppy that probably fits exactly where she is at. Her name is Odd Molly. I call her Molly. And she is very determined to do anything but what I'd like her to.
You know, there's so many. I'm sitting there going, that's pretty much what God probably thinks about us when he looks at us.
Exactly. Every complaint I have about her comes back and looks me in the face, you know.
Of course it does. Okay, so now let's talk about this season of your life and identity, because one thing we've talked about in this I Am Online experience is that if our sense of value and worth are based in our talents, our achievements, our appearance, our roles, our relationships, our career, if our sense of identity is wrapped up in those things, the truth is that sooner or later, those things are going to change or go away.
Yeah,
Right?
definitely, and affected or infected, however you want to look at it. But I think that we have to plan in our brain, have some space. It's called grace, for the fact that life is imperfect, and so are we. There will always be something that isn't quite right. There will always be something we wish was different. And there will always be something that comes into our life that's so unexpected that we can't believe that it's happening to us. But the truth of the matter is that his word says, in this life, you will have tribulation.
Yeah.
Not you might, or some will, but in this life, you will have tribulation, but to be of good cheer, because he's overcome these things in our behalf. That doesn't mean we don't have to go through it. That means that there is always hope in him. So at this stage of our life, I think of my husband who had to have his leg amputated, who lost a great deal of his vision, who is losing muscle tone, the frustration and the daily demands that it puts on him is really hard. And I want his life to be easier, but I know that everybody's got hardships to deal with. And I have to say, Les has been my hero. He just rises up, and even on his worst days, he's got a funny joke.
I love
got,
that because he does.
he's got one more song to sing. And I remember one time they were rolling him into surgery, and a little while later they rolled him back out. And I said, "What's going on?" And the two doctors said, "We don't know if he realizes how much danger he's in when we do this surgery. And we like him so much. We don't want to lose him." And so they talked to him. He said, "I've come all the way here. Let's go for it." And so they rolled him back in and did the surgery. And grateful.
That sounds like Les. I love it. As Les and I have talked, he said he had an amputation, and maybe this is totally irreverent, but those of us who have gone through losses, we learn to find humor in weird places. So I've told Les that his leg and my tongue are up in heaven having a great time just waiting for us to join them. It's body part heaven. So we'll all be restored at some point.
We will be whole and all our parts will work. And won't that be joyous?
Oh, and we won't have to worry about not being behaved because God will be we will be made whole inside and out. Won't that be grand? It's going to be glorious.
I was diagnosed with a familial tremor. And I said, "Oh, what does that mean besides my handshakes? My signature, I've lost it." And they said, "Well, it just means that it runs in families." And then I remembered several family members that had tremors when they got older. And I thought, well, there's a very visual humility in that. There's really nothing you can do about it. So when people ask me to sign books today, I say, "Now you just need to know I have a tremor, so it will be quite unique." And sometimes I can pretty much control it, and other times I'm all over the page. But that's what I have to offer now. And I thank the Lord I'm still here to offer it.
I love that you said unique. This is something that we talked about as a group in week 1 of the I Am Online experience, that we were created with intention by a God who chose us to be alive. So the fact that God created us with intention, made us unique intentionally, we were formed by his hand, and yet you and our culture spends so many thousands of millions of dollars to try to make us uniform and like everybody else, rather than celebrating the differences. And one thing I love about you, Patsy, you're an artist at heart. For those who are watching, you can see some of her art in the screen behind her head. And she paints beautifully. I have some of her art here in my house. But one thing that I've learned from you is truly your ability to appreciate uniqueness, things that other people would label as a flaw. You find a way to reframe it into art, into unique expressions of creativity. And that's really that's a particular skill that I think we could all benefit from.
Well, I've been broken most of my life. And so I do appreciate other broken people that I can see the hand of God working to reconstruct and to put them back together, not to be like anyone else, but to be the very best of what he intended. We intend things like good looks and fashion statements and things that will attract people in other ways. But what really ends up attracting one person to another is someone who is courageous, someone who is at peace in the midst of difficulty, someone who colors outside of the lines in a way that expands our thinking, or who writes in a way that puts our feelings into placement. That's really what draws us.
That is so well said, because we have bought into a false message that that the world only wants our best perfection, our best attempts at perfection, or our best attempts at appearing as a certain image. But that doesn't inspire courage. The places of connection are the places of struggle and brokenness, and our willingness to walk through it.
That's right. That's right. And it's not like when a hardship knocks on our front door that we want to open the door for it to come in.
Absolutely.
That's not a natural thing, but there are some things we can't avoid. Like my husband losing his leg. He had no way to prevent them removing it because it had to be done or the infection would have killed him. And so when I would tell him how brave he was, he would say, I didn't have a choice. But where his choice came in was his spirit. It was the way that he interacted with people around him. He wasn't nasty, or he didn't take out his disappointment on people. I mean, you watch somebody go through that kind of loss and be sweet to others and helpful to them. It really draws you in, and you think, I want to know him better. Where does he get that kind of intentionality that in the midst of a miserable situation, he's still spreading joy?
Well, you and I talked about this online before we got on the video. There is courage that expresses itself in the fiery heat of a momentary crisis. There's a certain kind of courage, but there's an entirely different kind of courage that has to rise up and express itself every day when you choose to live in an imperfect life.
Yes, yes. When you have to face it again and again and again. And you know it's never going to go away. And in fact, it may intensify.
There are so many people in this I Am Online experience, so many, I mean, we're talking in the hundreds, who are dealing with some significant losses and grief and pain. I mean, just there's a wide variety. Of course, there's many with physical ailments, but there's many who have dealt with just horrible childhoods or grievous abuses or betrayals of friendships or losses of spouses. And we could go on and on. And those things are, I mean, the more that I hear stories, the more that I realize that all of us, humanity suffers. We all do. We all suffer in different ways, but we all suffer in some extent. And what I'm hearing you say that I really want to emphasize for those who are watching is that when you choose to wake up every day and still believe in the goodness of God, even when all you can do that day is make your bed, when all you can do is wake up and make your bed, but you still turn to the name of the Lord God and trust his goodness. That is an extraordinary courage that our world needs. That means we need you.
That's right. And may I say, grieving is such a necessary and honorable path. It is not pleasant to grieve, but it's necessary, because if you don't grieve, all of your sadness will fill the space that was meant for joy. And one of the ways that we can help ourselves along the grieving path is through journaling, is through music, is through art of all kinds, is through gardening, is through inviting people into your home with your gift of hospitality. Your grief can end up being joy for others in their ability to watch your demonstration of courage on a regular basis.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. And another way to say that, I have a surprise for you. I didn't tell you that I have this, but another way to say that in four very simple words is
God uses crackpots. That was the beginning.
Yes, it's the beginning. I have it on myself, Patsy. Can you believe that?
That's my very first book.
Isn't that so sweet? So this was on my shelf. And when I was going through my books this past week, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to show her that I have this. God uses cracked pots. And you know what? I have to, and at the same time, I have a more recent one. You are more than you know.
And it's not because we're a big deal, but it's because he's greater than we can imagine.
Yes.
That's why we're more than we know. And it's such an exciting truth to embrace.
It really is. And I find it so, I mean, it was just such a, I believe, a divine thing when I looked on my shelf, and the two books I had have to do with identity, have to do with us seeing ourselves the way God sees us and embracing our brokenness. And I'm going to give you a minute to say if you have one message, one encouragement, one thing to offer those who are watching right now, what would you say?
I would say that I would really encourage you to identify your gift and then to step into the fullness of it, because we become the best version of ourselves when we live out in our gift, because the gift was from God. So know your gifts. And one of the ways you can know that your gift is by what people have been telling you all your life that you're good at. Mm-hmm. That isn't an accident. You were good at it. They're not doing it just to make you feel good. And the reason you may not have treasured it is because it's so easy for you. Mm-hmm. And the reason it's so easy is because it was a gift. Mm-hmm. And so identify your gifts and lean into those, because you will then function in a way that will give your life quality, and there will be an awareness of his presence in you and through you.
There's nothing else left for me to say except for this. You, my friend, your presence in my life makes me a better woman. You, and I mean this, I would say this to you privately, and I've told you this before. Your presence in my life has been a rare and unique gift. It has nothing to do with all your many talents and all of that, even though I admire those things. It's who you are, and the fact that you have opened your life to let me into yours, and that you have so graciously entered into mine. And you've pointed me to Jesus again and again, and you've helped me be a better woman. And I love you.
I love you too, and you are my hero.
Bless you, my friend.
Thank you.
For all of you, hang on here for a second, Patsy. For the rest of you who are watching and joining us today, thank you so much for joining our Identity Unplugged live video with special guest Patsy Clairmont. I'm going to circle back around in the comments on the Facebook page after we get off here in a minute, and I will answer any questions that we didn't get to and respond to your comments there. And then for those of you who are watching this later, because you're in Australia and you were sleeping when we recorded this, we just want to welcome you too. You are welcome to be a part of this, even when you watch the recorded video and aren't able to be on the live. So thank you for being with us. Make sure you keep checking onto the Facebook page throughout the week for ongoing conversation about week 4 presence. And then make sure you join us again next Monday, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, for the teaching session that I'll be doing on part 5 of I Am, which is all about rescue. Rescue. I love that word. Rescue is a beautiful, beautiful word, and we have it. So thank you again, Patsy, and thank you for all of you who have been with us. We love you, and have a great night.